Okay. I am interested. One Piece chapter 1066. I'm gonna say it right now, man. The way that Oda has the ability to just seemingly pull back stuff that you get way hundreds of chapters ago and make it relevant today. This is like peak storytelling right here, man. So this is making a lot of sense on why CP0's been dispatched to Egghead. Like, this makes sense. Vegapunk knows about the truth of Ohara, and most importantly, now that the Straw Hats know, they're completely in danger as well. I like how we're getting all this stuff that we had like presented to us in Water 7 and Annie's Lobby. Finally, we're getting more of the payoff to it now. This is so crazy that Oda was thinking this far in advance. Like, yo. Oh, man. So, backing things up, though. So, we open up the chapter where Robin is being told about the truth of what happened. Basically, that there used to be a futuristic city in the past hundreds of years ago, and that they believe that it was only a theory. And you can tell this entire time that Vegapunk is just testing to see how much Robin knows. And Robin's like, okay, so this took place during the Void Century. And the Straw Hats, you can tell that basically they're wondering how much Robin knows. The first one that asked the question is Nami, which that in itself makes sense because Nami is one of the smartest Straw Hats that we have. And once this gets thrown out, Vegapunk goes into this long monologue. And Vegapunk says that it might be really hard for you to remember what happened 22 years ago, but when your hometown was destroyed, I think it was because you guys found out about the truth of this particular kingdom that existed. And we find out about what happened in the Void Century. It's a history of war. Basically, the 20 kingdoms, they ganged up, they won the war, and they ended up forming the world government. And basically, they wanted to make sure that none of the ideals of this super advanced, futuristic, progressive kingdom would ever be able to flourish in this new era. So they erased all traces of it from history. And so when the Straw Hats hear this, you rightfully see Nami saying, oh my God, how could this be? Usopp looks shocked. Frankie, being the goofball that he is like, oh, this is a tale of romance and mystery. However, Sanji's the one that puts this together. He's like, wait a second. So the people that know this, they're all dead as well. And I like that Sanji was the one that came to that conclusion, because that kind of goes back to Sanji's upbringing, because Sanji, with the type of father that he is, Sanji knows exactly how this would actually turn out. And once this is done, you got Usopp just banging his head, trying to force himself to remember what life was like before any of this happened. He's like, I don't remember anything that you just said. I am completely innocent. We see Usopp as the coward as this is going on. And what I like here is that Vegapunk is like, see, this is only a theory, but Nico Robin, if your hometown was wiped out over this, that means that this is true. And you can tell Vegapunk is really just trying to see just how much Nico Robin has been able to figure out since she was a child at the time. And Nico Robin is playing the chess game right back. And it's one of those things where you can tell that Robin, because she's getting those memories of her hometown, this is definitely a soft spot, but she definitely needed this for closure. And I like that Oda is using this to continue her character arc, because she's basically saying, my people had to carry out a lot of painstaking research to get the information that they have. With status like you, being somebody so important to the world government, can't you confirm this? And it's that survivor instinct out of Nico Robin kicking in. And what I like here is that Vegapunk puts more of the cards on the table and says, like, look, you know, even if I, as important as I am, started asking these questions, I would be eliminated as well. And so as soon as Nico Robin hears this, she says, well, how would you have figured out about the truth of this kingdom if that's the case? If that's something that is actually what's happening, how would you have actually figured all this out? And so essentially we learn more of what happened after the day of the Buster Call. So we all know that like Nico Robin had that huge bounty on her head, and everybody's like, why was this little girl the lone survivor? Why did the world government want her dead in this way? The narrative that they put out there was that the people of the island, the researchers, were trying to basically overturn the world government, overthrow it. And so Vegapunk ended up going to the island because Vegapunk knew Dr. Clover. And Vegapunk wanted to see for himself what exactly was it on this island that made everyone get destroyed? And so what we find out is that in a last ditch effort, all the scientists that were on that island, all the researchers, they compiled all the pages from the books that they had, and they just threw it into this giant pit, and they made a lake out of the pages. And so because the soldiers that were on that island are all goofballs, they didn't realize the true value of what was staring them in the face. So they didn't burn down any of those pages or anything. They just kind of let them live. And we end up seeing how Nico Robin's having a flashback to her mother, and her mother saying like, hey, history is one of the most important things that humanity has. Don't you ever forget that. We can't give up on the future of the world, because in order to maintain the future, you also have to remember the past. And we get like the information with Saul, and we see more of that flashback. We see Saul taking Nico Robin and getting her out of there, and we learn later in the chapter that Saul is actually alive. Well, one thing that we see here is that when Dr. Vegapunk gets there and he sees that the giants are taking all those pages and they're taking the pages back to Elbaf, we run into Luffy's father, and we learn more about Luffy's father. And I found this to be very interesting. I can see how Luffy is Dragon's son, because Dragon shows up. He's in his early 30s at this point, and we find out that like Dragon doesn't particularly care about fighting. However, he's seen enough at this point, and he says that like, I was sick to my stomach to find out that these people were killed just because of information they got. I'm going to build up an army so big and so powerful that we can fight back against the world government itself. And he calls out Vegapunk for basically having joined the world government. And these two, they have a really good conversation, really good debate at this point. And what I like about this is that, one, we learned that like Dragon did have that relationship with Clover, but we also learned that those giants, they basically took all those pages back to Elbaf themselves, because they understand the true value of what was there. And so you see more of the pieces kind of coming together. This is clearly like Oda setting up the end game here, because you have Nami saying, oh, I didn't know that Luffy's dad was so passionate. Usopp's like, oh, Elbaf, which, you know, Usopp, that's part of his journey to get there. And then you have Robin going like, okay, so that's why Dragon had the interest in me, basically. She doesn't say it, but she says like Dragon and Professor Clover had a connection. Now you see why Robin ended up where she did at that point. Frankie, because of what happened with Tom. And then you also have Sanji, where he's like, oh my God, I can't believe that Ivankov was actually somebody associated with Luffy's father. So you see how everything's kind of coming together, just as how Dragon assembled his crew. Luffy, whether it be by fate, whether it be by accident, Luffy has also assembled a crew as well that appears to be marching down the same path that will eventually overturn the world government. So we find out that Vegapunk has kept all the information that he read on that island stored inside of his head. So again, now we see why CP0 is coming here to this island. They got to get rid of Vegapunk. Vegapunk's been found out, whether or not he realizes it. And what I like here is that we shift over and we see how Luffy and Chopper and Bonnie and Jinbei, they actually meet the real Dr. Vegapunk. And as soon as Bonnie lays eyes on Vegapunk, you can tell that like Bonnie is super pissed off, and you know at the back of her mind, she's like, I'm going to kill you for what you did with my father. But for the time being right now, it looks like that's been pushed to the side. And Vegapunk's super wacky. He's like, man, these boots, if you press these buttons, they allow you to hover and fly. And we end off with the wacky final page where you see Luffy look like he's having the time of his life. But the big thing here is that we're getting more connections back to what happened with Robin's flashback and Annie's lobby. And if Oda's able to tie this together in the way that he looks like he's about to, we could be getting one hell of an arc on our hands, man. I am so excited to see what the next chapter is actually going to entail.